Hi, good morning. Today we are at Proto, Bangalore, and with me I have the founder of pagalguy.com, that's Allwyn. Hi, Allwyn. So, Proto has been a platform for startups to showcase themselves, and who better than Pagalguy himself explaining things? How has he been here? Okay, Alvin. So, I would like to know some things about like in the initial days when you thought of Pagal Guy. How did the initial thought come up?
Pagal Guy was primarily a hobby. I wish I could tell you it was this brilliant business plan, but it wasn't. I was looking for information on MBAs and I couldn't find any. And I decided the best way to sort that problem was to start a site.
So at that point of time, did you have someone along with you to, or what we can say is like, did you have some co-founder or some colleagues with you to bring it up, or
Absolutely not.
it was all yours?
Right.
So I would say, what did you think of? Like, did that time it was in the year like
So we started off in September 2002.
September 2002. So that time, I hope the MBA craze was a bit on a higher verge now. And did you have some similar sites or websites on this niche actually?
So there were smaller communities which were structured around Yahoo groups. There was even smaller community structured around Sifi groups, but none of them really were extremely intuitive or easy to use. So I think when Pagal Guy came out with the MBA forum, that was probably the most easiest to use and probably had the most interesting set of people you could actually interact with. And I think that's what worked in our favor.
Okay. And ever since, have you looked for some funding, or how have you bootstrapped actually this business?
So Pagal Guy was bootstrapped for almost, it hasn't completely been bootstrapped. In terms of funding, we've not really looked out for external funding. The things that have really worked extremely well for us is that we have been fairly careful with our cash. We only spend what we earn, spend lesser than what we earn. So the first 4 years was a hobby, at which point of time I was investing quite a bit of money into running Pagal Guy. But after 4 years, we started hiring, and now we are a profitable company.
Okay. So what was your revenue model which you started off actually?
So for the first 4 years, as I said, it was a hobby. I was not terribly keen even on monetizing it.
Fine,
And after that, we realized that the fastest and easiest way to probably monetize it would have been advertising, and that's the route we took.
Advertising, as in you even use Google AdWords and things like that?
We use Google AdWords to a very limited extent. Very limited. Probably 1% or 0.5% of our entire traffic inventory is given to Google.
Okay, you never thought of hiring people into this? You still...
So we have a 20 people team now.
Today?
Right. So we have grown from 1 to 20 in the last 2 years, and most of this growth has been self-funded, which means we make money, we hire people, we build offices. The same, everything a normal company needs to do to grow. We have been just fairly slow about it, and we have been fairly thoughtful about it, and it's worked out.
How would you, when you started off, how would you cater the content moderation on your website? I guess it's more of user reviews what you have over there?
So even right now, 99% of the content on the site is user generated.
Right.
And we just have a form where users who self-moderate, one. Secondly, we have moderators who spend quite a bit of time, adhering to the basic set of rules in terms of quality posts, in terms of trying to keep content of good quality, also to weed out users who are being abusive, etc. But that is generally about what we do.
How do you find events like Proto and such events for today's if a budding entrepreneur has to start up?
I wish there were such events when I started up, because I had fairly no clue how to start a company, and I probably did it in the slowest, weirdest possible manner. I think the world has changed quite a bit since we started off, and people are just much more clearer as to what they really want to achieve, and there is a much better entrepreneurial ecosystem with events like Proto. You are able to meet entrepreneurs, VCs, potential employees, the full shebang. So I think it's a fairly good event for young aspiring entrepreneurs and for startups to demo their products.
So what's the agenda for 2009 at Pagal Guy? Something new?
Lots of things are in the pipeline, and we do not talk about them until we have done it already. It makes us fairly PR shy. So once we do it, it'll be out there. In terms of what we want to achieve this year, we just want to grow a safe and successful company.
Okay, for a budding entrepreneur, what would you suggest? A fresher getting into this, or a fresher who had been placed off college to some of the companies, joining it for a year or two maybe, and then kicking off into this? What is more advisable? You have been into it for long.
So I started off right after my college.
Right.
So I'm going to be biased here, but I don't think external work experience helps you terribly much.
Not much.
I mean, you still have to figure out the nuts and bolts about running a business. So whether you're outside, having worked for a couple of years, I'm not terribly sure that helps as much. But there are places it does help, which is, say, if you worked in the Silicon Valley for, say, 6 years in a startup, you kind of understand the pulse of the market. You are probably interested in building newer products, etc. But basically, off your college, going into a standard company and then suddenly changing your tracks and going into a startup, it's not necessarily the best way of doing it.
Okay. Apart from them, I would like to know, suppose a startup, when it kicks off actually. So, initial days, how do you think of managing the accounts and finances for, suppose it's a co-founder based thing and things are escalating at a level, which is the right time when you should have things defined at accounts and finances and different departments, different people looking for that, right from day one, or how should initially?
I think doing something from right from day one is not terribly a good idea unless you're sitting on loads of cash. Startups survive because they are thrifty, because they don't spend too much money, and secondly, they are just optimal with the usage of everything they possibly have. So probably these things should be put out until the very end. As long as they can stretch it and they can stretch their very abilities to run a company, and then they were sure that, well, one more addition into a company will free you from certain things whose skills are used elsewhere. At that point, I think it's a good time to hire. So we only hire when we absolutely need somebody to hire, not a minute before that.
Right. Allwyn, what would you have to say for the freemium model which was under discussion yesterday at Proto? So free versus premium model, paid model for users and all. What does Pagal guy have to think on this? Do you have something,
I mean, I think it was fairly well articulated. For content, freemium hardly if ever works. Works in certain places like New York Times and Wall Street Journal, if I'm not mistaken. But it does not always work in the content space. Content, to a large extent, has and probably will be free. A freemium model, on the other hand, works well for products. You could probably give somebody a trial of a product or a feature-crippled version of the product, like a shareware. So it's not a unique model anyway. It's been there since the age of software in the shareware form. So I think it's still more suitable for the software version part of it.
Okay. I wonder, Allwyn, when you kicked off, how did you manage the branding of your this thing? Because Web 2.2, I guess the term was coined off, or maybe it was just being coined. It was just on the verge of getting out, So
right.
Those days, how did you take care of branding stuff? Vis-a-vis, had it been today, what do you suggest for startups to how to brand themselves in such a competitive niche actually?
So, as Seth Godin probably puts it best, he said your startup has to have some EST quality. It has to be the coolest, hottest, nicest, sexiest in some form. We probably are in form of the coolest brand. It's a unique brand. People tend to identify it extremely well. It allows us a lot of ability to pull off products, pull off communities, which a lot of other brands will find it fairly tough to pull off. So given a choice, and I think people just should be fairly thoughtful about, one, the product they are putting out in the market, and secondly, usually branding is not that big a deal. Not that big a deal. Just because you have a great sounding brand name, I don't think people are going to come to the site anyway. Right? If that worked well, I think a lot of other people would be out of business. So the best thing to focus on would be on your product. And if you get your product right, I think people are going to talk more about it, and the good word just keeps on flowing around.
Okay, thanks Allwyn. It was nice having you on board.
My pleasure.
Thank you.